Elena Vasquez stood at the large window of her ship and looked out at the stars. The UES Prometheus was the best ship humans had ever built. It could travel faster than light, and had weapons that could destroy entire moons. Elena was its commander, and she had been exploring space for 20 years. But tonight she was not thinking about her ship or her crew. She was thinking about the silence. 3,000 years ago, humans had first talked to aliens. It happened, back on Earth in the year 2024. The aliens had sent radio signals with math problems. Human scientists had sent math problems back. For a few months they had shared simple ideas. Then, suddenly, the aliens stopped talking. Elena pulled up the old records on her computer. The last alien message was just numbers in a pattern. After that, nothing. No radio signals, no light signals, no messages through the strange quantum channels that humans had learned to use. Complete silence. At first, people on Earth had waited. They thought the aliens would come back. Years passed, then decades, then centuries. Slowly, humans began to believe they were alone in the universe. But humans did not give up. They built better ships and traveled to other star systems. They found planets and made them into new homes. They built huge space stations where millions of people lived. After 3,000 years, humans controlled 847 different star systems. Elena walked through the hallways of her ship. The walls showed pictures of all the worlds humans had built. Some were like Earth with blue skies and green plants. Others were strange and beautiful in different ways. There were ice worlds where people lived under the frozen surface. There were worlds with red skies and purple oceans. There were giant space cities that spun slowly among the stars. Humans had become very good at building things. They had machines that could make anything they needed from basic materials. They had computers that could think almost like people. They had learned to transfer human minds from one body to another, so people could live for hundreds of years. They had weapons that could crack planets in half. Most humans thought they were safe. They had big fleets of warships. They had shields that could stop almost any attack. They had been the strongest force in their part of the galaxy for 1,000 years, but Dr. James Chen was worried. Elena found Chen in his laboratory looking at pieces of old alien technology. These were the only things the aliens had left behind when they stopped talking. Chen had spent his whole life studying these fragments. "Commander," Chen said without looking up from his work, "have you ever wondered why they really left?" Elena sat down next to him. She had asked herself this question many times. Maybe they just lost interest in us. Chen shook his head. "I don't think so. Look at this." He pointed to a piece of metal that seemed to change color as Elena watched it. "This technology is thousands of years ahead of ours even now. The aliens who made this could have destroyed us easily in 2024, but they didn't. Instead, they just disappeared. So, what do you think happened?" "I think they were afraid of us." Elena laughed. "Afraid? In 2024, humans barely had computers that could fit in their pockets. We were just learning to build simple rockets." "That's exactly my point," Chen said. "They talked to us for a few months. They learned about us. Then they ran away. What could they have learned that scared them so much?" Elena did not have an answer. She left Chen to his work and went back to the bridge of her ship. Her crew was busy checking their sensors and computers. The Prometheus was on a mission to explore a new part of space, far from any human worlds. Lieutenant Park looked up from her station. "Commander, we're getting some strange readings." "What kind of readings?" "Gravitational distortions. Very big ones. Like something huge is moving through space, but we can't see it." Elena frowned. "Show me." The main screen filled with numbers and charts. Elena studied them carefully. She had seen readings like this before, but only when human ships used their fastest drives to jump between star systems. But these readings were much stronger, much bigger. "How many ships would it take to make readings like this?" Elena asked. Park did some quick calculations. "Thousands, Commander. Maybe tens of thousands." Elena felt a cold feeling in her stomach. No human fleet was that big, and no human fleet was in this part of space. "Keep monitoring," she ordered, "and send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we might have found something important. Over. The next few hours, the readings got stronger. The invisible ships were getting closer. Elena's crew worked frantically to figure out what was happening. They tried every type of sensor they had. They sent out radio signals and listened for replies. Nothing worked. Then, suddenly, the ships appeared. Elena stared at the main screen in shock. Space was full of alien vessels. They were huge, much bigger than any human ship. Their hulls seemed to bend and twist as if they were not quite solid. Strange lights moved across their surfaces in patterns that hurt Elena's eyes to look at. There were thousands of them. They filled the space around the Prometheus like a metal cloud. Elena's ship, which had seemed so big and powerful just minutes ago, now looked like a tiny insect next to these giants. "Commander," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a signal." "From the alien ships?" "No, ma'am. From everywhere. Every radio frequency at once. Every quantum channel. Even our internal systems are picking it up. Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was human. It spoke perfect English, but with an accent that Elena had only heard in old historical recordings. It sounded like people from Earth 3,000 years ago. "Humans of Terra," the voice said. Each word was clear and cold. "You were judged and found wanting. Your species was quarantined to prevent contamination of civilized space. You have violated that quarantine. You will be cleansed." The signal ended. Elena and her crew sat in shocked silence. Finally, Elena found her voice. "Get me a direct line to Earth Command. Emergency priority." As her communications officer worked, Elena stared out at the alien fleet. 3,000 years of silence, and now this. The aliens had never left. They had been watching, waiting, and now they were angry. Elena thought about all the human worlds, all the space stations, all the millions of people living peaceful lives among the stars. They thought they were safe. They thought they were alone. They were wrong. The alien ships began to move, forming up into attack formations. Elena recognized the patterns from old military books. These aliens knew how to make war. "Message sent, Commander," her officer reported. "Good. Now get us out of here. Maximum speed." As the Prometheus jumped away from the alien fleet, Elena made a promise to herself. Humanity had 3,000 years to get ready for this moment, even if they did not know it. Now they would find out if that time had been enough. Behind them, thousands of alien ships began their journey toward human space. The long silence was over. The war was about to begin. Admiral Sarah Morrison stood in the command center of Earth's main space station and watched the reports come in. The alien fleet was moving toward human space, and it was bigger than anyone had imagined. "How many ships?" she asked her aide. "Our best count is over 50,000, Admiral, and they're all huge. The smallest ones are bigger than our largest battleships." Morrison had been in charge of human military forces for 15 years. She had fought pirates and rebels. She had commanded fleets in training exercises, but she had never faced anything like this. The aliens called themselves the Kethmori Dominion. They had sent more messages since their first warning. Each message was the same cold, formal announcement that humanity would be cleansed from space. Dr. Chen had been right to worry. The aliens had never left. They had built some kind of invisible barrier around human space. For 3,000 years they had watched humans spread to new worlds. They had let humans think they were alone. Now that humans had grown too big, the aliens were coming to stop them. "Admiral," her communications officer called. "The alien fleet has reached the Centauri system." Morrison closed her eyes. Centauri was home to 12 million people. It had 3 inhabited planets and dozens of space stations. It was also the location of humanity's third fleet. "Are our ships engaging?" "Yes, ma'am. Admiral Rodriguez is leading the attack." Morrison opened a channel to watch the battle. The screens showed space around Centauri filled with human warships. They were good ships with powerful weapons and strong shields. The third fleet had never lost a battle. Today would be different. The Kethmori ships moved in perfect formation. They did not seem to hurry. When the human ships fired their energy weapons, the alien hulls simply absorbed the beams. When human missiles hit their targets, the alien ships seemed to repair themselves instantly. Then the aliens fired back. Morrison watched in horror as human ships simply vanished. Not destroyed. Vanished. One moment they were there, and the next moment there was only empty space. No explosion, no wreckage, nothing. "What kind of weapons are those?" Morrison asked. Her science officer, Dr. Williams, studied the readings. "I don't know, Admiral. It looks like they're just deleting our ships from reality." The battle lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, the Third Fleet was gone, all of it. 300 ships and 50,000 crew members had simply stopped existing. But worse was coming. "Admiral," the communications officer's voice was shaking. "The Keth Mori are approaching the planets." Morrison watched as the alien ships moved toward Centauri's 3 worlds. Each planet had billions of people. Cities covered their surfaces. Orbital factories and space elevators reached up toward the stars. The alien ships fired once at each planet. The worlds died. Morrison stared at the screens as 3 entire planets turned to dust. 12 million people had lived there just moments ago. Now there was nothing but floating rocks and empty space. "My God," Dr. Williams whispered. "They can destroy planets with single shots." Morrison forced herself to think clearly. She was a military officer. It was her job to protect humanity. But how could she fight an enemy that could delete ships from existence and destroy planets with ease? Over the next few days, more reports came in. The Keth Mori fleet was splitting up and moving toward different human systems. Every time they arrived, the same thing happened. Human fleets would attack and simply disappear. Then the planets would be destroyed. In 1 week, humanity lost 37 worlds and over 1 billion people. But Morrison noticed something in the battle reports. The aliens always fought the same way. Their ships moved in identical formations. They used the same tactics against every human fleet. They seemed to expect quick, easy victories. Commander Elena Vasquez had made it back to Earth with her ship, the Prometheus. She came to Morrison's office with an idea. "Admiral, I've been studying the alien battle recordings. They're incredibly advanced, but they're also predictable." Morrison looked up from the disaster reports on her desk. "Predictable how?" "They fight like they've been using the same methods for thousands of years. Perfect formations, overwhelming firepower. They expect the enemy to line up and fight them directly. And humans don't fight that way, we never have. We use tricks, we hide. We attack from unexpected directions." Morrison thought about this. Human military history was full of small forces defeating larger ones through clever tactics. But could human cleverness work against technology that was thousands of years more advanced? "What do you suggest, Commander?" "Let me take a small fleet to the Vega system. The aliens are heading there next. Instead of meeting them in open battle, I want to try something different." Morrison looked at the map of human space. Red markers showed where the Keth Mori had already attacked. The pattern was clear. They were moving toward the most important human worlds. Vega was a major industrial center with 8 million people. "What's your plan?" "The Vega system has an asteroid belt with mining operations. If we can't destroy their ships directly, maybe we can use the asteroids against them." It was a desperate idea, but Morrison was running out of options. Every traditional battle had ended in complete human defeat. "Take the 5th Scout Fleet," Morrison said. 12 ships. If this doesn't work, then at least we'll know we tried. "Something different," Elena finished. Elena left Earth with her small fleet 3 days later. Morrison watched them go and wondered if she would ever see them again. The battle at Vega was unlike anything that had happened before. Instead of meeting the Keth Mori ships directly, Elena's fleet hid in the asteroid belt. When the aliens arrived, they found only empty space where the human fleet should have been. The Keth Mori ships moved toward Vega's planets in their usual perfect formation. They had done this dozens of times before. They expected no resistance. That was when Elena sprang her trap. Human mining ships had been working in the asteroid belt for decades. Elena had turned them into weapons. As the alien fleet passed through, The asteroid's explosions went off everywhere. Not energy weapons or missiles, but simple chemical explosives that pushed huge rocks toward the alien ships. The Kethmori vessels, designed to withstand energy attacks, were hit by asteroids moving at incredible speeds. Their shields could stop laser beams, but they could not stop millions of tons of rock and metal traveling faster than bullets. For the first time since the war began, alien ships were destroyed. The Kethmori fleet turned to fight Elena's hidden forces, but the human ships were spread throughout the asteroid field. Every time the aliens fired at one position, the humans had already moved to another. After 6 hours of fighting, the surviving alien ships retreated. Morrison received Elena's report with amazement and hope. Humanity had finally won a battle. Not through superior technology, but through the thing that made humans different: their willingness to break the rules and fight in ways their enemies did not expect. "Send this battle plan to all remaining human fleets," Morrison ordered. "It's time to show these aliens what humans are really like." Captain Marcus Webb had been an asteroid miner before the war started. He knew how to move through space quietly and how to make big rocks explode. Now he was leading a fleet of converted mining ships against the most advanced aliens in the galaxy. 6 months had passed since the Kethmori first attacked. 17 human worlds were gone, including Mars. 2 billion people were dead. But something was changing. Webb studied the tactical display in his command ship, the Kethmori fleet approaching. The Kepler system was smaller than usual, only about 200 ships. The aliens were starting to split their forces to attack multiple human worlds at once. "That's their mistake," Webb told his crew. "They think they can beat us with small groups now." Webb's fleet was made up of ships that had never been meant for war: mining vessels, cargo haulers, and construction ships. But humans had learned to turn anything into a weapon. His flagship used to carry ore between asteroid mines. Now it carried nuclear bombs disguised as cargo containers. His escort ships used to cut up asteroids with industrial lasers. Now those same lasers could slice through alien hull armor. "Target approaching, Captain," his sensor officer reported. "Kethmori fleet is entering the system." "Are the mines in position?" "Yes, sir. Scattered throughout the approach route just like space debris." Webb smiled. The aliens expected humans to meet them with warships in formation. Instead, Webb had filled space with thousands of small mines that looked like harmless chunks of rock and metal. Each mine contained enough explosives to crack an asteroid in half. The Kethmori ships moved through the system in their usual perfect formation. Webb watched as they passed the first group of hidden mines. "Detonate," he ordered. Space around the alien fleet erupted in fire. The mines exploded in a carefully planned sequence, pushing debris and shockwaves toward the Kethmori ships from all directions. The aliens found themselves surrounded by a storm of high-speed metal fragments. Their energy shields flickered and failed under the impact of thousands of pieces of shrapnel. Hull plates cracked. Several smaller ships spun out of control. "Second wave," Webb commanded. More mines exploded, this time closer to the alien formation. Webb watched with satisfaction as 3 Kethmori vessels were torn apart by flying debris. But the aliens were learning too. The surviving ships changed their formation and began firing at anything that looked suspicious. They destroyed dozens of Webb's mines before they could explode. "Time for Phase 2, Webb said. "All ships, attack pattern Delta." Webb's converted mining fleet came out of hiding behind Kepler's largest moon. But instead of attacking the alien ships directly, they attacked the space around them. Industrial mining lasers carved up nearby asteroids, creating clouds of dust and rock fragments. Cargo ships dumped their loads of metal ore, creating a maze of obstacles. Construction ships fired their building materials like giant shotgun blasts. Within minutes, the neat space battlefield had become a chaotic mess of floating debris. The Umbauer, Kethmori ships designed for clean, long-range combat suddenly found themselves fighting in close quarters with limited visibility. Webb's ships were built for this kind of environment. They could navigate through asteroid fields and work in zero visibility. His crews had spent years moving through space junk and dangerous mining sites. The aliens did not know how to fight this way. "Ram them," Webb ordered his ships. It was a tactic no military academy would teach. Webb's mining ships were tough and disposable. The Kethmori vessels were advanced and expensive. When a human cargo ship crashed into an alien cruiser, both ships might be destroyed, but humanity was getting the better deal. Webb watched as his crews carried out suicide attacks with mining explosives, rammed alien ships with ore haulers, and used construction equipment to tear apart enemy vessels at close range. By the end of the battle, Webb had lost half his fleet, but the entire Kethmori force was destroyed. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Chen was making discoveries that would change the war. He had been studying captured alien technology and intercepted communications. What he found shocked him. "Admiral Morrison," he said, calling her to his laboratory. "I know why the aliens are so predictable." Morrison looked at the alien devices on Chen's workbench. Some of them seemed to be computers, but they worked in ways human science barely understood. "They're all connected," Chen explained. "Every Kethmori is linked to every other one through some kind of quantum network. They share thoughts, memories, and experiences instantly." "That sounds like an advantage." "It is, for coordination, but it's also a weakness. They've been fighting the same way for thousands of years because they've conquered hundreds of other species using identical tactics. It always worked before, so they never learned to adapt." Morrison studied the alien equipment. "What about the species they conquered? Didn't any of them fight back effectively?" "That's just it, they didn't. We've been translating their historical records. Every species the Kethmori met followed similar patterns. They developed technology, built civilizations, and then fought. Wars using logical, predictable methods. And humans?" Chen pulled up a display showing human military history. Battles from ancient Earth appeared on the screen. "Look at this. Humans have been fighting illogical wars for thousands of years. We use tricks, deception, and tactics that make no mathematical sense. We sacrifice valuable resources to gain temporary advantages. We break our own rules when it helps us win." Morrison began to understand. The aliens can't predict us because we don't follow logical patterns. Exactly. And it gets worse for them. Every time we try something new, their shared consciousness learns about it instantly, but they can't figure out what we'll try next because even we don't know. This gave Morrison an idea. If human unpredictability was their greatest weapon, then she needed to make the war as unpredictable as possible. She called together her best commanders and explained Chen's discoveries. Then she gave them new orders. "Forget everything you learned in military school," she told them. "Stop trying to fight like professional soldiers, start fighting like humans." The results were immediate and dramatic. Commander Elena Vasquez turned passenger cruise ships into stealth bombers by hiding weapons in their entertainment systems. Captain Sarah Kim used terraforming equipment to change the gravity on an entire planet, trapping an alien invasion force. Major Robert Torres programmed children's video games to hack into Kethmori computer networks. Within weeks, human forces across the galaxy were fighting battles that made no sense according to any military manual. They used garbage as camouflage, turned shopping centers into fortresses, and launched attacks using equipment designed for farming and construction. The Kethmori, with all their advanced technology and shared intelligence, found themselves losing battles they should have won, easily. Their perfect formations were disrupted by human tactics that seemed random, but were devastatingly effective. The war's turning point came at the Battle of Proxima Station. Admiral Morrison herself led the defense of humanity's largest space station. The Kethmori brought a massive fleet, over 1,000 ships. They expected to destroy the station and everyone on it within hours. Instead, they found themselves fighting the strangest battle in their species' history. Morrison had turned the entire station into a weapon. Docking bays launched clouds of maintenance robots reprogrammed as kamikaze drones. Shopping areas became sniper nests for soldiers with mining lasers. The station's life support systems were modified to create pockets of deadly gas that would kill aliens, but not harm humans. Most importantly, Morrison had evacuated most of the civilian population and replaced them with volunteers willing to fight in ways that would have horrified traditional military officers. When Kethmori boarding parties entered the station, they found themselves fighting teachers who had turned school supplies into weapons. doctors who used medical knowledge to target alien weaknesses and children who had reprogrammed toy robots into tiny but effective fighters. The battle lasted 3 days. When it was over, the Kethmori fleet was destroyed and Proxima Station was still intact. For the first time since the war began, the aliens retreated from a major engagement without completing their mission. Morrison stood in the damaged command center and watched the surviving alien ships flee into deep space. Around her, ordinary humans who had become warriors celebrated their impossible victory. The Kethmori had made a critical error. They had judged humanity based on their technology and their civilization. They had not understood what humans were capable of when they stopped being civilized. Now, they were about to learn. The alien response was swift and terrible. Admiral Morrison watched the reports come in from across human space. The Kethmori were no longer trying to conquer human worlds. They were destroying them completely. "Show me the recordings from New Geneva," she ordered. The main screen displayed the death of a planet. New Geneva had been home to 400 million people. It had beautiful cities, vast forests, and clean blue oceans. Morrison had visited there many times. Now it was gone. The Kethmori had used a weapon Morrison's scientists could barely understand. It seemed to unravel the forces that held atoms together. In less than an hour, an entire world had been reduced to cosmic dust. "How many planets have we lost this way?" Morrison asked. Her aide checked the reports. 12 in the past week, Admiral. They're not landing troops or trying to capture anything. They're just erasing everything. Dr. Chen entered the command center carrying a data tablet. His face was grim. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the intercepted alien communications. The Kethmori have changed their strategy completely. They've decided that humanity is too dangerous to be conquered or controlled. So they're exterminating us. Yes. But there's more. They've sent calls for help to other parts of their empire. We're going to face fleets from across the galaxy." Morrison felt a chill of fear. The human military had learned to fight the Kethmori forces they had already encountered. But if the aliens brought reinforcements from their entire empire, humanity would be outnumbered by millions to one. "How long before these reinforcements arrive?" "Our best estimate is 6 months to a year." Morrison stared at the tactical display, showing human space. Red markers indicated worlds that had been destroyed. Yellow markers showed planets under attack. Green markers represented the worlds that were still safe, but there were fewer of them every day. "Dr. Chen, I need to ask you something important. In all your research on the aliens, have you found any indication of why they quarantined us 3,000 years ago?" Chen hesitated. "I've found references to something they call the terror protocols, but the records are heavily encrypted. I'm authorizing you to use any resources you need to break that encryption. I have a feeling that understanding why they feared us then might help us survive now." While Chen worked on the alien records, Morrison faced an impossible decision. Traditional military strategy said she should spread human forces across as many worlds as possible to defend them all. But humanity no longer had enough ships or soldiers to defend every planet. She called a meeting of her senior commanders. Elena Vasquez had been promoted to admiral after her victories using unconventional tactics. Marcus Webb now commanded an entire fleet of converted civilian ships. Dr. Lisa Park, the child psychologist who had become a military strategist, was there to help plan their next moves. "We can't save everyone," Morrison told them bluntly. "The aliens are destroying planets faster than we can defend them. We need a new strategy." "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" Elena asked. "We evacuate the outer colonies and concentrate our population on a smaller number of heavily defended worlds. Then we make the aliens pay so high a price for each attack that they'll think twice about continuing." Webb shook his head. "With respect, Admiral, that's still a losing strategy. Even if we make them pay dearly, they have more ships than we do. Eventually, they'll overwhelm us." Dr. Park spoke up. "What if we change the rules entirely? Instead of trying to defend planets, what if we attack theirs?" Morrison considered this. Human intelligence had identified several Kethmori worlds within striking distance, but attacking alien planets would mean abandoning the defense of human space entirely. "It's too risky," she decided. If we send our fleets to attack their worlds and they destroy ours while we're gone, we'll have nothing left to come home to. That was when Dr. Chen burst into the meeting room. I've broken the encryption, he announced breathlessly. I know why they quarantined us. He activated a holographic display showing historical records from the Keth-Mori archives. The images were from 3,000 years ago, during humanity's first contact with the aliens. The first contact team was led by Dr. Sarah Kim, Chen explained. But they didn't just exchange mathematical signals with the Keth-Mori. They shared human culture, music, art, literature, and most importantly, military history. The display showed records of human wars throughout history. Ancient battles with swords and shields, medieval sieges, modern conflicts with tanks and aircraft, nuclear weapons, chemical warfare. The aliens studied all of this, Chen continued. They analyzed human strategic thinking and psychological profiles. What they found terrified them. Morrison studied the alien analysis of human warfare. Even translated into English, the fear in the records was clear. According to their classification system, we're what they call a Death World apex predator species. Most intelligent species develop technology to escape their violent origins. Humans are the first species they've encountered that turned violence into an art form and then carried it to the stars. Elena leaned forward. What does that mean exactly? It means they were afraid of what we might become if we continued to develop. So they quarantined us, hoping we would either destroy ourselves or evolve into something less dangerous. Webb laughed bitterly. Instead, we spent 3,000 years getting better at war. Chen nodded. Their records show that they've conquered over 400 species in the past 10,000 years. Every single one of those species followed predictable patterns. They built weapons for defense, not offense. They fought wars to protect their territory, not to destroy their enemies completely. And humans? Humans fight wars to win, whatever the cost. We develop weapons that are designed to cause maximum damage to our enemies, even if using them might hurt us too. We use strategies that seem insane because they require enormous sacrifices for small advantages. Morrison understood now why the Keth-Mori were so desperate to destroy humanity. It was not just about territory or resources. They saw humans as a threat to their entire way of life. Dr. Chen, do their records indicate what they think would happen if humanity continued to develop for another few thousand years? Chen's expression was grim. They believe we would eventually become what they call a galaxy killer species. A civilization so focused on warfare that it would destroy entire star systems just to eliminate potential threats. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, Morrison spoke. Well then, if they're going to treat us like monsters, maybe it's time we started acting like monsters. She turned to her commanders. Dr. Park, I want you to design the most psychologically devastating attacks possible. Make the aliens afraid to approach human space. Admiral Webb, convert every civilian ship you can find into a weapon. I don't care if it's a garbage scow or a luxury yacht. If it can fly, it can carry bombs. Admiral Vasquez, I'm putting you in charge of a new project. I want you to take our best scientists and engineers and develop weapons that the Keth-Mori have never seen before. Weapons that will make them question whether destroying us is worth the cost. Morrison looked around the room at her officers. They were good people who had been forced to become warriors. Now she was asking them to become something more dangerous. The aliens think we're monsters, she said quietly. They're about to find out they were right. Over the next few months, humanity began developing weapons and tactics that went beyond anything they had used before. They built bombs that could turn entire moons into weapons. They created computer viruses that could drive alien minds insane. They developed ways to turn black holes into missiles. Most frightening of all, they began working on a project that would make the Keth-Mori's planet-killing weapons look like toys. As Morrison approved each new weapon system, she wondered if they were proving the aliens right. Maybe humanity really was too dangerous to be allowed to survive, but she pushed those thoughts aside. The Keth-Mori had made their choice when they decided to exterminate every human in the galaxy. Now humanity would show them what extinction really looked like. The final battle was coming, and Morrison was going to make sure that if humanity died, they would not die alone. The Keth-Mori came to Earth with the largest fleet in their history. Admiral Morrison stood in the command bunker buried deep beneath what used to be the Pacific Ocean and watched millions of alien ships drop out of hyperspace around humanity's home system. The fleet stretched from Mercury to Jupiter, blocking out the stars with their massive hulls. "Final count?" she asked. "Over 3 million vessels, Admiral," her sensor operator reported. "Including their planet killers and the Void Throne." Morrison nodded grimly. The Void Throne was the flagship of the Kethmori Emperor himself. It was a ship the size of a moon, capable of destroying entire star systems. The aliens had brought their most powerful leader and their deadliest weapon to end humanity once and for all. They had come to the right place. "Status of Project Prometheus?" Morrison asked. Dr. Chen looked up from his control station. "All systems ready, Admiral. We can trigger the sequence at any time." Morrison looked around the bunker at her surviving officers. Admiral Elena Vasquez commanded the human fleet, what was left of it. A few thousand ships hiding in the outer planets waiting for the signal. Captain Webb was in charge of the converted civilian vessels that would make the aliens' final victory as expensive as possible. But the real weapon was Earth itself. Over the past year, humanity had evacuated almost everyone from their home planet. The few million people who remained were volunteers who knew they would not survive what was coming. They had spent months turning Earth into the largest bomb ever created. The oceans had been replaced with liquid antimatter, held in place by magnetic field generators. The planet's core had been converted into a controlled black hole that could be triggered to expand. The moon had been hollowed out and filled with railguns that could fire projectiles at near light speed. Most importantly, every major city on Earth contained quantum computers linked to consciousness transfer networks. When the final battle began, the minds of humanity's greatest military strategists would be downloaded into these systems, allowing them to continue fighting even after their bodies were destroyed. "Incoming transmission from the Kethmori fleet," the communications officer announced. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bunker was ancient and filled with cold authority. The Kethmori Emperor himself was speaking. "Humans of Terra, your species has proven itself to be a cancer in civilized space. You fight without honor. You kill without purpose. You turn tools of creation into weapons of destruction. Today, your infection ends." Morrison activated her own transmission system, broadcasting to the entire alien fleet. "Emperor of the Kethmori, you came to our space uninvited. You murdered billions of innocent people. You tried to judge us by your standards and found us wanting. Now let us show you what we think of your judgment." The first phase of the battle began as the alien fleet moved toward Earth. Morrison's surviving ships emerged from hiding and began their attacks, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. For every human vessel, there were 1,000 Kethmori ships. But humanity had learned to fight differently. Instead of trying to win through superior numbers or firepower, the human fleet focused on causing maximum psychological damage. Ships loaded with antimatter rammed into the largest alien vessels, creating explosions visible from Earth. Converted mining ships fired black hole generators like bullets, creating gravity wells that tore apart entire alien formations. Most disturbing to the Kethmori was humanity's use of consciousness transfer technology. When human ships were destroyed, their crews' minds were instantly downloaded to backup systems. Within minutes, the same officers were commanding new vessels, continuing to fight as if death meant nothing to them. The aliens had never faced an enemy that could survive the destruction of their physical bodies. To the hive-minded Kethmori, the concept of consciousness existing separately from the body was terrifying, but despite their psychological warfare, the human fleet was slowly destroyed. After 12 hours of fighting, only a few dozen human ships remained. The Kethmori fleet, though damaged, was still enormous. Phase 2, Morrison ordered. Earth's orbital defenses activated. The moon opened fire with its massive railguns, sending projectiles through the alien fleet at incredible speeds. Space stations that had pretended to be destroyed suddenly came back online, revealing themselves to be heavily armed weapons platforms. But the most effective weapons were the simplest ones. Morrison had filled Earth's orbit with millions of small objects, pieces of space debris, old satellites, and chunks of metal. To the aliens, they looked like harmless junk left over from humanity's space age. In reality, Each piece was a carefully placed mine. When the Kethmori fleet moved into close orbit around Earth, the mines activated. Millions of small explosions surrounded the alien ships, creating a storm of high-speed shrapnel that overwhelmed their shields and tore through their hulls. For 6 hours, Earth's orbit was a battlefield of unprecedented destruction. Alien ships fell from the sky like burning rain, but there were too many of them, and Earth's defenses were eventually overwhelmed. The surviving Kethmori ships took positions around the planet, preparing for the final bombardment. The Void Throne itself moved into position directly above Earth's North Pole. The Emperor's voice broadcast again. "Your defenses are broken. Your ships are destroyed. Surrender now and we will grant your species a quick death." Morrison looked around the command bunker one last time. Her officers were at their stations, ready to implement the final phase of their plan. They all knew what it meant. "Dr. Chen, activate the consciousness transfer systems. Upload everyone." Across the planet, the minds of humanity's remaining military leaders were downloaded into Earth's quantum computer network. In seconds, Morrison found herself existing as pure information, connected to every defensive system on the planet. It was a strange sensation. She could feel the planet's magnetic field like her own heartbeat. She could sense every alien ship in orbit through Earth's sensor networks. She had become one with humanity's homeworld, and now she was going to turn that world into a weapon. "This is our final answer," Morrison broadcast to the alien fleet. "You wanted to see monsters? We'll show you monsters." Earth exploded. The antimatter oceans detonated in a chain reaction that consumed the planet's surface. The controlled black hole in the core expanded, creating a gravity well that pulled in everything within 1,000,000 kilometers. The moon's railgun systems fired their entire ammunition supply in a single massive salvo. But the real destruction came from something the aliens had never imagined. Morrison and her officers, existing now as digital consciousnesses, took direct control of the exploding planet and turned the entire disaster into a guided weapon. They shaped the explosion, directing its energy toward the alien fleet. They turned fragments of Earth into relativistic projectiles aimed at specific targets. They used the expanding black hole as a gravity catapult to hurl chunks of debris at near-light speed. The Kethmori fleet, expecting to watch Earth's destruction from a safe distance, found itself caught in an explosion that had been designed specifically to kill them. Morrison felt a moment of satisfaction as she watched the Void Throne itself torn apart by a piece of what used to be the Himalayan mountains, accelerated to 20% of light speed by Earth's dying gravity field. The explosion was visible from neighboring star systems. When it was over, both Earth and the entire Kethmori fleet were gone. The space around humanity's former home was nothing but cooling plasma and scattered debris. But Morrison's consciousness survived, along with those of her officers stored in automated probe systems that had been launched years earlier. As the probes traveled toward distant stars, they carried with them the complete genetic and cultural heritage of humanity. The message they broadcast was simple. We were here, we fought, we won. And if you threaten those who cannot defend themselves, we will return. 300 years later, a young alien scientist named Keltar discovered one of the human probes drifting through space. His people, the Zephyrians, were a peaceful species that had never known war. Keltar studied the probe's message and the historical records it contained. He learned about humanity's 3,000-year journey from a single world to a galactic civilization. He read about their war with the Kethmori and their final sacrifice. Most importantly, he learned about humanity's promise to return if other species were threatened. When the Zephyrians encountered their first hostile alien race, a few years later, Keltar made a recommendation to his government. They should not fight. They should not try to negotiate. They should simply broadcast a message throughout the galaxy. This species is under the protection of humanity. It worked. The hostile aliens retreated immediately. Word spread throughout the galaxy about the extinct species that still somehow protected the innocent. Civilizations that had never heard of humans began invoking their name when threatened by aggressive neighbors. The Kethmori Dominion, leaderless and broken after the loss of their emperor and greatest fleet, eventually collapsed. Their subject: species gained independence and many of them adopted human military tactics and philosophy. Humanity was gone, but their legacy lived on. They had proven that sometimes the most dangerous species in the galaxy is not the most advanced, but the one willing to sacrifice everything to protect what they